We update you on the latest LA Kings roster moves. We preview game 2 of the NHL season for the Kings, and it's time for another Kings fan feedback show that's on this episode of Locked On LA Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Kings fans, welcome to Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On LA Kings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. We'd love for you to leave us a positive comment on Apple Podcasts if you're a fan of the show. And we're also on YouTube. Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. I'm Eddie Garcia, your host of Locked On LA Kings. I've worked in sports media for the past 30 years, 20 plus years at the Fox Sports Radio Network. I'm also co-host of the Puck Podcast. It's a weekly NHL review show that's been putting out content for the past 17 years and a passionate LA Kings fan for over 30 years. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself with your purchase of a Jase case, providing you a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 500 plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. So if you have been listening or watching any of our recent episodes, you are well aware that the LA Kings are in a situation right now when it comes to their roster and the salary cap where a lot of moves have been made. And so we need to start off this show by updating you on the latest involving the Kings and their roster. So because of some salary cap issues that are going on, because of a suspension to Arthur Kaliyev, moves that were made today, Friday, include Brandt Clarke and Alex Turcotte being sent back to Ontario in the AHL. They were just called up on Thursday. We explained on Thursday's show exactly why that was the case. There are salary cap implications down the road because for reasons as why that they made that move. They were sent again back to Ontario. Meanwhile, the Kings recalled forward Alex Laferriere, forward Arthur Kaliyev, forward Jaret Anderson-Dolan, and defenseman Jordan Spence. Again, with forward Victor Arvidsson unfortunately going on long-term injured reserve. The silver lining is that his $4.25 million cap hit is off the books right now for the Kings, and it's off the books as long as he's on LTIR. That means LA can recall several players to replace him and still be under the salary cap. Good news is the Kings will have 12 forwards to play on Saturday, unlike the 11 they were forced to go with in the season opener on Wednesday. Again, you'd rather have the skill of Arvidsson, but again, this is a bit of a positive spin on things in a tough situation. As expected, Alex Laferriere and Arthur Kaliyev do get recalled. Laferriere will be in the lineup coming up on Saturday in game number 2 against the Carolina Hurricanes, while Arthur Kaliyev still has to serve that one more game left on his 4-game suspension. Got to be on the active roster to be able to serve your suspension. That's why he was called back up. Jaret Anderson-Dolan will be inserted on the 4th line, and Jordan Spence will be inserted on that 3rd pairing on the right side and run the Kings' 2nd power play unit. Very excited to get Spence in the lineup. I think that's definitely going to help the Kings offensively with Victor Arvidsson out, and from a defensive standpoint, he'll be just fine, especially when they were playing Tobias Bjornfoot on that right side instead. The team also announced that Jordan Spence has changed his number from number 53 to number 21. Tyler in Tehachapi asked me on Twitter if that meant that Spencer was up for good, because normally when you see a player that has had a training camp number, which traditionally has been any number over 50. Now that's changed a bit with players like Patrick Kane wearing number 88. We've seen players that it's kind of cool to wear a high number these days. Connor Bedard in Chicago wears number 89, so on, so on. Typically, though, in the past, if you had a training camp number like 53 for Jordan Spence, when you got a real number like number 12 or 21, in this case, it meant that you were kind of here to stay. And I think it's a good sign for Jordan Spence that they plan on having him at the NHL level more often than not going forward. But I would say because of the current situation that the Kings are in, I don't know that anyone like him is a definite on the roster at this point. So it's a good sign. It'll take some getting used to see him out there. I said on Twitter that when I think number 21, I think of Tony Granato and Brian Smolinski, and that means, yes, I'm older. But it's still, I think it's a positive sign. But regardless, like I said, after the season opener, we needed to get Brant Clark or Jordan Spence into that lineup, and we needed their offensive help with Victor Arvidsson out. So very good to see Jordan Spence is back, and very good to see that the Kings will have a full complement of forwards going on for game number 2 against Carolina, because they didn't have that in the season opener on Wednesday against the Avalanche. So the Kings practice lines on Friday, and I expect to see the same lineup on Saturday against Carolina, had Anze Kopitar centering the top line with Adrian Kempe and Quinton Byfield as expected. The second line had Philip Deneau, of course, at center with Trevor Moore, but Carl Grundstrom elevated to that second line because of his performance in game 1, where he had a nice goal. So he gets rewarded there. Okay. The third line, PL Dubois, along with Kevin Fiala and Alex Laferriere, who we talked about, looked very good in his NHL debut. So he gets another chance with those guys. And now a third line with a full 3 forwards of Blake Lizotte, Trevor Lewis back down to the fourth line after being on the second line, and Jared Anderson-Dolan back in the lineup. As far as the defensive pairings, the top 4, what you would expect: Drew Doughty, Mikey Anderson, Matt Roy, Vladislav Gavrikov, and then you've got either Tobias Bjornfoot or Andreas Englund, not sure which, and Jordan Spence will be on the right side. Those two guys, one of those two guys will be on the left side. So again, happy to get Jordan Spence in there as well. As far as the goaltending for Saturday's game against Carolina, it looks like it's going to be Phoenix Copley. We know that it's a Cam Talbot, Phoenix Copley tandem until somebody, enforces themselves or forces themselves or injects themselves because of their performance. There's a better word I can use than all of those. Until someone kind of seizes the job by playing much better than the other guy. Until then, it's probably going to be a platoon situation. So it looks like Phoenix Copley will go in game number 2. Quick scouting report on the Carolina Hurricanes. And while I take that deep swallow there for a moment, it reminds me, I'm not trying to make any excuses, not looking for any sympathy, but I am still dealing with the effects of COVID. So again, just like in their previous episode, if I need to take a drink of something to keep from coughing, or if I have to cough, I have a button I can turn off my mic so you don't have to hear that. But if there are any awkward pauses for you listening on the podcast, that's why. I apologize for that. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, you'll see me take probably a sip here and there, but I'm dealing with that. So I appreciate your patience with that. Quick scouting report on the Carolina Hurricanes, who the Kings are playing on Saturday. They won their season opener on Wednesday against the Ottawa Senators 5-3. They scored 3 third-period goals to pull out that victory. 2 of them came from their active defensemen. The Canes are expected to contend for the Metropolitan Division title this year. They are even contenders for the President's Trophy this year for the best regular season record in the NHL. They are a great team on the forecheck. They're great at cycling the puck. They spend a lot of time in the other team's zone, typically. Very well coached. They play hard. For a former NHL player and Rod Brindamore, who's very well respected and liked. They are led by forwards Sebastian Aho, Tuvo Teravainen, and Andrei Svechnikov, along with some talented defensemen like Jacob Slavin, Brent Burns, and Dmitry Orlov. And they got a couple of solid veteran goalies in Frederik Andersen and Antti Ranta. And while they don't have any superstar players like we saw with Colorado and Cale Makar and Mikko Rantanen and Nathan McKinnon, they have a very deep group. They'll rotate 4 lines at you. They'll come in waves. So no big star, but a lot of really solid, good players who know their roles and play them well. So it will be another challenge for the LA Kings on Saturday, as it was on Wednesday against the Avalanche. What do we want to see from the Kings, though, from game 1 to game 2? Well, it would be nice to win the special teams battle. Carolina did have a power play goal and a shorthanded goal in their win over Ottawa, so they've got capable special teams. The Kings, meanwhile, as mentioned, coming off an 0-for-5 performance with the man advantage against Colorado, and also allowed 1 power play goal as well. What else do we want to see? We want to see the stars show up for the LA Kings. They didn't show up in game 1 against Colorado. We need more than just 1 point from the likes of Anze Kopitar, Kevin Fiala, Adrian Kempe, and PL Dubois, and get off to a good start. The Kings fell behind 3-0 against Colorado, scratched and clawed their way back to make it 3-2 going into the third, and then end up losing by a score of 5-2. So again, going forward, game number 2, let's get that power play going, especially. Let's see some of our star guys really step up, and let's try and get off to a good start. I think those are all keys for the LA Kings to get their first win of the NHL season coming up this Saturday at home against the very tough Carolina Hurricanes. Hey, catch every moment of the Kings' hometown broadcast against the Hurricanes on Saturday, 7:30 p.m. Pacific time on Sirius XM on the SXM app. Search LA Kings. Hey, Friday, it means it's time for our weekly Kings fan feedback segment. We're going to start with your emails here in just a moment on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. That is why Jase Medical offers the Jase case. The Jase case provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use and gives you peace of mind so that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jase Medical is simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and online consultation and care. Don't get caught unprepared. Get $20 off these life-saving antibiotics today from Jase Medical by using my code LOCKEDON at checkout on jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. All right, we're going to get to your emails here right now. And the first email comes from Scott. He is in Simi Valley. And he says, well, I hate being right. As I feared, we needlessly lost Samuel Foggymo for nothing. And Jarrett Anderson-Dolan went through waivers unclaimed. And as you said, yes, I am upset. Those of us who rooted for Blakey and Luke through their on-ice careers will always love those guys no matter what. But my yearly ranting of the front office jobs are trending down, and Foggymo's situation should not have happened. Losing him was an embarrassment. I could list other gripes about Rob Blake, the GM, but I won't. He's done a lot of things well, so let's see how his plan works out. As for our keepers, I'd go with Copley and Rittich. This is more of a gut feeling than anything else. Talbot had a weak game against Vegas, but any keeper can. Rittich has looked strong, and Copley was very good last season. They are both 5 years younger than Talbot. I think Copper's got quite a competitive fire burning under his calm facade, and I believe he's got another strong year or two in the tank. The pundits around the league pointed to Copley's average save percentage numbers and goals against average, but if a team plays well in front of him, he just plain wins. If the team does not play well, including on the PK, it won't matter who's in goal. We saw how much Connor Hellebuck just signed for, and the Kings won't be acquiring any keepers anywhere near his caliber. And finally, it looks like Q is coming around. I still think next year is the year we'll see his full potential, but maybe he'll take a big step forward this year. As you mentioned, he looks stronger, more centered on his skates, but most of all, his hockey mind seems to be catching up with the NHL pace. He appears to be thinking ahead of the puck and anticipating play. If we can get Q and Turcotte going, it'll boost Rob Blake's image a ton. So again, that was from Scott in Simi Valley. I mentioned it as well. I thought the handling of the Samuel Foggymo situation was poor, and that goes on Rob Blake's mark. I don't know that his loss is a tremendous one anytime soon, and I don't anticipate Samuel Foggymo is going to turn into an all-star player. But again, if you were going to put Jarrett Anderson-Dolan on waivers anyway, why in the hell didn't you just do that first and keep Samuel Foggymo around? So that was poorly handled. I don't think there's any question about that. As far as the goaltending, we'll see. It's still way too early to make any decision on that, although it hasn't kept a lot of Kings fans from chiming in on the goaltending situation, which we'll talk more in just a bit. And yes, a great start for Quentin Byfield, but he's got to carry it over. We got to see more of that going forward, game 2, game 3, game 4. It can't just be a once in a while kind of thing. Our next email comes from Rob in Westchester. And he says, I've been a Kings fan since the dark days of the 70s, and I've been a fan for the good times and the bad. I found your podcast at the end of last season and have since become an everydayer. Thank you. He says, I was hoping that there was a secret deal in the works that was intended to bring Connor Hellebuck to LA at the deadline or sooner, with a promise of a great contract in the works. Obviously, with his new huge deal in Winnipeg, that will no longer be an option. Do you think the front office is committed to the current crop of goalies for the season, or is there another option that they may be looking at? It's our biggest weakness, and watching the preseason outings, I'm not convinced that Talbot or Copley have what it takes to get us there. Maybe Rittich. Anyway, I know it's early, and we have such a strong team. Seems a waste not to anchor it with someone more dependable in the future. What are your thoughts? Go Kings, go! Thank you, Rob, for the email. And yes, the goaltending has obviously been a big question. I've said all along, and I will probably say it again at some point in this show, I believe in the philosophy of not paying a goalie $6, $7, $8 million a year. I think that's foolish spending. I think you can find good enough goaltending, and you can use that $7, $8, $9 million to spend to make your team better in other areas. And we've seen proof that that has worked with other teams. We've also seen proof that a big number one goalie can win championships as well with Andrei Vasilevsky in Tampa Bay. So there's two schools of thought. You're either on one or the other. We've seen both work. So it's just a philosophy right now. Some teams are going in one direction. Most of them are actually. But there's still some teams. You mentioned the Winnipeg Jets they're paid big for Connor Hellebuck. We'll see how it works out for him. He's not Andrei Vasilevsky. He's never won a Stanley Cup. He's never gotten a team to a Stanley Cup final. So it's a lot of money to pay for a position that I think you can get away with paying someone a lot less. And that's what the Kings are doing. Whether it works out or not, we'll see. But I still have faith for now that it can work for the LA Kings. But the proof will be provided as the season goes along. What will the Kings make a deal at the deadline? It's certainly possible. If the Kings have said they're committed to winning a Stanley Cup now. If they feel like they need to make a bold move at the deadline because the goaltending isn't good enough, I have every confidence that they'll do everything that they can. So it's certainly an option, but let's see how this plays out before we start talking about that. It's been one game. Chris Simmons is in Salem, Oregon. He says, I've been saying pretty much since the start of the pandemic, when I fully committed to the Kings as my NHL team, that I would only change teams when Portland got an NHL team, because he lives near Portland. He says, if anything is going to change that and cause me to change teams before then, it's ads on jerseys sold to fans, especially if there are other NHL teams that aren't doing that, and they're limiting jersey ads to only game-worn items that are directly used by players. Remember I said the start of the pandemic was when I fully committed to the Kings. That's due in part to the corporate greed in the form of apparently not paying arena staff during COVID. Pause pushed me out of the Golden Knights fan base and sending their team into a free fall where they are now in 32nd place as far as teams I like are concerned. And if revolt from fans like me doesn't cause the Kings to reverse their part of their decision, they may undergo a similar fate. Hopefully, though, the Kings will do the right thing and get rid of the ads on the jerseys sold to fans, except the game-worn ones. One positive is at least that they didn't go with crypto.com, because I hate crypto companies, and that might be the one way I buy a jersey with an ad on it, is as a thank you if a advertising company, currently Mercury Insurance, I think you said, comes in and buys the naming rights to the arena and rids the Kings fans of crypto.com, hopefully forever. And again, that was from Chris in Salem, Oregon. I'm not sure what your beef is with crypto. It's not something I'm interested in, but frankly, I really don't care what they call the arena. All these stadiums, all these arenas, they change names every 3 or 4 years anyway. If some dumb company wants to pay the Kings a gajillion dollars with their name on the outside of the building, and the Kings can use that money to better their organization, fine by me. So as long as it's not something too embarrassing or too silly. I remember the Sacramento Kings had like Sleep Train Arena or something like. There are a few ones that are pretty funny. I think the one in New Orleans is like some sort of a pastry or something. And there are some odd ones out there, but overall, I don't pay any attention to it because, like I said, they change these names all the time. I know out here by where I live is where the LA Galaxy play, and that thing's changed names like 4 times. So I don't even pay attention anymore to what they call them, to be honest with you. This is Jason, the everydayer in Redondo Beach. It says, I don't know if you've noticed, but they don't show replays at crypto. This is a huge disservice to the fans. Sometimes you miss a goal, a play, or a penalty. There are times when you see a tip in and you want to see if it was a valid penalty or a big hit. It makes no sense. I love seeing the games live, but I would rather watch it from home. What are your thoughts? Keep up the great work. Feel better soon. And go Kings, go. Thank you, Jason. Let me take a sip real quick here. Sorry about that. I started to feel I was going to start coughing here. So, all right, I'm going to sound like a big time media jerk here. But when we sit up in the press box, and I do take in a few games every year as a fan, so I can cheer and just have fun. But when we sit in the press box, we have monitors that are overhead. So we just look up at the TV feed if we want to see a replay of something. So I rarely look at the video board in the arena. But if that's the case, that makes no sense. Why would they not show the replays that's what they're there for, to show the replays, not just, the funny people jumping around during the songs. And they put in those extra video boards too, right? Recently. So I haven't noticed that because of the monitors in the press box, but that doesn't make any sense. That's very, very weird. Oh boy. I didn't cough last episode. I'm trying to keep that streak going. Finally, our last email comes from Rich in San Pedro. He's literally lives like 3 blocks away from me. He says, so this email is mainly to say happy birthday. I know you mentioned a few episodes ago it was coming this week. Thanks for being there for us Kings fans. Would have been a long off season without Locked On. Season is finally here. Thanks again, and go Kings go. And by the way, Rich sent me an email that had like a Starbucks gift card on it or something. That was super nice, Rich. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's not going to be a great birthday, I don't think, this week. It's coming up on Monday. My wife and I were supposed to go to the Chargers-Cowboys game. I've mentioned before she's a huge Chargers fan. We're season ticket holders, and we were going to the Monday night game, but then I got COVID, and then unfortunately she got COVID from me. I feel terrible about it. So she's not going to be able to go to that game. And on my birthday, we're not going out anywhere to eat because we're both recovering from COVID. But thank you very much for the birthday wishes, and thank you very much for that Starbucks gift card. That was not necessary, but I thank you very much for that. All right, we've got YouTube comments coming up in just a second here on Locked On LA Kings, your team every day. Hey, when you're drafting a fantasy team, do you ever wish you could go do the same thing with your business team? If you're building a roster to win their league, then you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when all you can do is fill all those positions with Indeed. Indeed knows that when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. And that's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? Then you need Indeed. The LA Kings play Saturday, 7:30 Pacific time against the Carolina Hurricanes, and catch all of the action of the hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Search for LA Kings. Let's check in on some of the YouTube comments, and we had plenty of comments on the season opening loss. And I do appreciate all the comments from the episodes, but it does seem like there's kind of a common theme in some situations about the goaltending. So I guess I just want to reiterate my position on the goaltending. And you heard a couple of our emailers refer to the big contract signed by Connor Hellebuyck of the Winnipeg Jets, a guy that some thought the Kings might be looking to acquire. He just signed a 7-year deal with the Jets. He's in his 30s right now, and he signed for $8.5 million per season. It's a lot of money to pay for a goaltender who's already in his 30s. I think Connor Hellebuyck's a very, very good goaltender, but if you told me we could have him right now on our team for 7 years at $8.5 million, I would say absolutely no thank you. I don't think that you need to spend that kind of money on a goaltender when you can find other good enough goaltenders for a much, much less price and build around that goaltender. Again, it's a philosophy that's the philosophy I have. A lot of other teams are kind of turning to that philosophy. Not every team has that philosophy. If you can get that one big great goalie, I'm sure there's some teams that want to do it. I'm not saying the Kings want to just have any kind of throwaway bargain basement goalie, but I just think the position is so good across the board in the league that you can find a good enough goalie to get by if you improve your team around that goaltender. And again, I've said it a million times, the Vegas Golden Knights just did it. They had 4 different goalies they played this past year. None of them were great. Logan Thompson was an all-star, but kind of by default. But I just think that's how I would prefer to spend my money. So we'll see how it plays out with the Kings. But I'm a believer in that philosophy. But we won't know if that's the right philosophy for the Kings until they go out and get the job done, at least get a deep run in the playoffs. And there are other people that don't agree with that. They think we need another Jonathan Quick. But I mean, good luck finding a Hall of Famer. They don't grow on trees right now. But there's two thoughts of how to get it done. I'm okay with the Kings' philosophy with what they're doing right now. It doesn't mean that I'm completely sold on Cam Talbot, but I'm also not gonna. I just don't understand a lot of people that are just already after one game thinking that he's not good enough when, as I said, look, I'm not a goaltending expert, but I think I know what is a good goal and what is a bad goal. And he allowed one bad goal of all the goals that he allowed against Colorado. The 4 goals he allowed, 3 of those goals, you got to credit Colorado or you got to criticize the Kings. I don't see, if you want to use Connor Hellebuck as an example, I don't see him stopping a Cale Makar point shot through traffic where you can't see it. I don't see Connor Hellebuck stopping a Mikko Rantanen deflection from like 10 feet away. I don't see him stopping Cale Makar do anything because Cale Makar is, Nathan McKinnon. Nathan McKinnon is elite in the NHL. He does crazy things. So he scores a goal from a bad angle. It's not your typical bad angle goal. So that's the way I see it. I'm not trying to make excuses for Cam Talbot. If Cam Talbot sucks and lets in bad goals, I will tell you that he sucks and he lets in bad goals. But I'm also not going to say he sucks when I see what I see. I didn't think that he let in a lot of bad goals. He let in 1. The 3rd goal is a bad goal. The rest of them, those are tough goals. So we'll see how it goes going forward. But clearly, this is going to be a big debate, I think, amongst Kings fans for the rest of the season. On the Kings goalie situation, we had this from Mercy Williams, 2698. He said, lack of elite goaltending still a head scratcher going into the Kings season. Such great systems and high octane, powerful skaters with this team. How is it that management moved on from having a great goalie pipeline? One can argue elite goaltending isn't a necessary ingredient for a Stanley Cup championship in the salary cap era. Watching game 1 reminds me of a team from a year ago with less than stellar goaltending was thematic. Kings will need to be very complete team and highly accountable with current goaltending tandem. Earnest effort is there from Copley and Talbot. Just not sure this situation will win Kings those games they need to finish high in the Pacific. And that's fair. I think that's absolutely fair. I like I said, we saw with Phoenix Copley last year, the Kings can be a playoff team with good enough goaltending. Whether they can be an elite team, whether they can be a team that makes a deep playoff run, that's another story. So we shall see. Again, the results will be what the results will be. This on Alex Laferriere from @PhotoGuy49. He says, Laffy's going to be a pretty special player going forward. Many of us has followed him during his college years, and his last year at Harvard showed that there was some legitimate talent. The young man plays a complete 200-foot game, has good wheels and great hands, and has that it factor. And the Kings are going to love him in black and silver for years to come. The real question is, what will Blake and company do with him once Laffy organically and seamlessly fits in with PLD and Fiala, unlike the continued attempt of banging the square peg Artie into a round hole. My take is Laffy is lights out for the first half with Ontario. We may see a move to get him on that 2280 line. We'll see. I mean, look, there were a lot of people that said Laferriere was NHL ready in the preseason. I said, hold on. Can we see him play an NHL game for us before we say that? And he played an NHL game and he looked good. He didn't look out of place. I thought there were a lot of things to like, but I think people fall in love with these young guys and they just think they're going to be the next big thing. He still needs to prove it. I think there's encouraging signs with Alex Laferriere, but he still has a long way to go. So I would pump the brakes a little bit with him, but he's getting an opportunity and hopefully he makes the best of it. And on our interview with Nick Nixon, let me take a little sip here. We had a ton of kind comments on the Nick Nixon interview, and deservedly so, not because of me, but because of Nick Nixon. I was so excited to get him to come on the show. That was great, and he couldn't have been nicer. We'll have him on again because he said he'd be more than happy to come on again. This came from KC Go Kings Go. Way back in the 84-85 season, we had the student ID section seats at $5 a game, section 320 above the press box. During intermission, we'd go by the press box and say, hi, Bob. Hi, Nick. And we were always greeted back with kindness and sincerity. This is one of my best memories from the old forum days. Thanks, Nick, and thanks, Bob, for a lifetime of memories. Go Kings, go. I just want to say that the current group of broadcasters for the LA Kings, Nick Nixon, Jim Fox, Daryl Evans, could not be more nice, genuine people. And Bob Miller was the same way. I had an opportunity to meet Bob a few times. All these guys are sincere, genuine, awesome people. They're just unbelievably generous, nice guys, and we're very, very lucky to have them. And oh, by the way, I think they all do a really great job at their jobs too, which makes it even better. But no, it's we're really lucky to have these guys as our broadcasters for the LA Kings and representatives of the organization. They do a great job, and looking forward to having Jim Fox and Daryl Evans and Nick Nixon on throughout the season here on Locked On LA Kings. They're super generous with their time, and we really appreciate it. All right, that's going to do it for this year's show. This year's show. I still haven't coughed yet. I want for you everydayers, those of you that listen and watch every day. Monday, we'll obviously recap the Kings' Saturday game against the Carolina Hurricanes, give you the latest Kings news from over the weekend. We'll also touch on the first two games of the season for the Ontario Reign. We're also going to have the Kings hitting the road for the first time this season. They're going to be playing in Winnipeg coming up on Tuesday. So PL Dubois returning to Winnipeg, and for the first time, Gabe Velarde, Rasmus Kupari, Alex Iafallo will be playing against the Los Angeles Kings, so that's going to be weird. We'll certainly talk about that. We're going to have a special guest next week to be determined, and of course, we'll cap it off with another fan feedback show next week on Locked On LA Kings. Thank you to everyone who took the time to comment on the YouTube episodes or to send an email. I've always said it, and it's 100% true. This show literally not possible without your participation. If you want to send an email for next week's show, it's lockedoneddie@gmail.com, EDDIE. You can also post your comments on the YouTube channels as always. Would love for you to stay connected with the show. Following us on Twitter and Instagram, we are at Locked On LA Kings. I really hope by next week I'm over all this and I won't feel like I have to cough if I talk for more than 4 sentences. All right. I'm Eddie Garcia. Thank you as always for listening and watching this episode of Locked On LA Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Have a great weekend. We will talk to you on Monday. And as always, go Kings go.